For decades, the moldboard plow was king. But the playing field is changing. A different breed of equipment dots the landscape, designed to prepare the seedbed and manage crop residue. Today, we'll take a look at one of the best game plans for getting low-cost, dependable weed control in modern tillage systems. Our unique Tillcam will give us an incredible close-up look at what's going on right down on the field and below. John Matter will be joining us with our exclusive Tillustrator to give us the play-by-play analysis of how to use pre-plant incorporated herbicides. And we'll rate this year's crop of veteran and rookie tillage equipment.
It's nearly perfect field conditions today as we look forward to the start of a new season. Welcome everybody to our preseason kickoff. I'm Pat Summersdon down on the field. With me again, of course, is my colleague and analyst, John Matter. John, the big focus this season has got to be defense.
That's right, Pat. We all know that grasses and small-seeded broadleaf weeds can yield a bushel of trouble. Heck, I've seen some grasses as tough to kill as AstroTurf. That's why pre-plant incorporated herbicides like Treflan and Broad Strike Plus Treflan can be the best defensive game plan in tackling weed problems quickly and easily. All it takes is a little pre-game preparation.
You know, John, tillage is an awful lot like football. You have to make the most out of every pass.
Because by maximizing each tillage pass, you enhance fertility, lower production costs, save time, improve weed control, decrease compaction, and even reach conservation compliance goals. And one of the best ways to optimize your first tillage pass is by applying Treflan herbicide ahead of it. This way, you take advantage of the subsequent tillage trips for two-pass incorporation that most thoroughly mixes the herbicide with the soil. Let's go back to John Matter with our exclusive Tillustrator to show us how it works. John?
Thanks, Pat. We've all heard him say, it's a game of inches. Well, it couldn't be more true. We're talking about the performance zone, right here, 2 to 3 inches below the surface. Treflan is the best choice in mulch till because it doesn't rely on rain to move it through crop residue to this zone. Mixed with the soil, Treflan creates what I call a prevent defense. A chemical barrier that prevents weeds from breaking through. If a weed germinates and breaks for daylight, boom, it hits this barrier and it's gone. And if you have a good incorporation game plan, you leave all this residue on the soil surface.
Two-pass incorporation is the traditional way to achieve a solid chemical barrier. And you will need 2 incorporation passes if you're using TR10 granules or liquid Treflan impregnated on dry fertilizer or sprayed on standing corn stalks. And that second pass needs to be delayed at least 5 days. But experience down on the field shows that effective one-pass incorporation is possible with liquid Treflan herbicide applied to previously tilled ground. The keys to the one-pass game are proper field preparation, proper application and incorporation, and maintaining the barrier protection in subsequent cropping operations.
You're right, Pat. We all know that field condition is a critical element in every game plan. To get your field in shape for one-pass incorporation, you should start planning before the off-season. You want to size and spread heavy corn crop residue at harvest. Heavy residue is no problem for Treflan because it bonds with soil particles. However, heavy residue can interfere with secondary tillage equipment. Just make sure your equipment can properly mix the soil and distribute the herbicide.
Wet field conditions? Now that's a problem. You want to avoid combining on wet fields because it'll cause deep ruts and compaction, which must be corrected later.
And you want relatively dry fields. Let me show you what I mean. When you run a disc through a field, you don't want it to be like a knife going through cake frosting. No way. You want that soil to crumble.
You know, it's also important to avoid working on wet fields because it'll cause slabbing or clotting, leaving a rough surface that's hard to correct in one incorporation pass. But when it's dry, don't go too deep just because the ground's working so nice.
Now, you've heard of a level playing field. Well, that's our goal with primary tillage. Work that field when the soil's almost dry to leave it level. If your field has ruts or ridges like this, you can't get a good one-pass incorporation. Why? Because your herbicide is dispersed at different levels on the soil surface and you can't mix it evenly with one pass. You end up with holes in your herbicide defense where weeds can pop through. Harrows, or tine attachments, make good tools for leveling ridges and for preparing the soil for a herbicide application.
And John, selecting the proper lineup of primary tillage equipment is also critical. You need to make sure that it best suits the intended purpose. To break up compaction, the best fit is a V-ripper or a chisel plow. But for sizing residue and incorporating impregnated fertilizers, go with the primary disc. And when you're ready to treat the soil, it's critical to pay attention to application details to build a strong defensive barrier with one pass.
The keys are applying the proper rate of herbicide, using enough water for complete coverage, and selecting nozzles which provide the best coverage. One of the best ways to save time and reduce field traffic is to attach a spray bar to the tillage equipment. However, if the chemical is applied separately, you must incorporate within 24 hours. John?
Again, it comes down to field conditions and a strong tillage pass to ensure one incorporation establishes a strong herbicide barrier that keeps the weed competition down. Let's go to the Tillcam. Now, see here? We've got a well-prepped field where the soil breaks apart and mixes uniformly. Will you look at that field cultivator work? You can get great one-pass incorporation in these conditions because the herbicide will disperse evenly at that 2 to 3 inch layer, creating a solid barrier.
Now let's take a look at the roster. You have to select the right equipment and operate it properly to thoroughly mix the top few inches of the soil to get that kind of impenetrable barrier in one pass.
That's right, Pat. For most equipment, you want to set the tillage depth twice as deep as the performance zone. Let's go to the Tillustrator. I'll show you what I mean. Take this field cultivator here. If you want to incorporate your Treflan at 3 inches, you'll set your tillage depth down here at 6 inches. Now remember, it's a game of inches. You also must level the equipment side to side and front to back while in the field, and make sure you operate that equipment at the recommended speed. Pat?
Thanks, John. Now let's take a look at that herbicide incorporation roster. Starting off, the disc. You can get optimum herbicide incorporation by using a 7 1/4 inch blade spacing and a leveling attachment on this outstanding workhorse.
And Pat, you want to run that disc at 5 to 7 miles per hour.
Right. Next up, one of the most popular implements for one-pass incorporation, the field cultivator. For best performance, operate it at 5.5 to 7 miles an hour. Use wider sweeps for shallow incorporation and make sure the sweeps are at least as wide as the effective shank spacing.
Let's go to the Tillcam. Take a look at this star in action. Now, see here how those sweeps toss the soil and residue in the air? Let's look at the replay. Now, as everything lands, the heavier soil falls faster and the residue ends up on the soil surface. This helps you build that chemical barrier and retain a high level of surface residue.
That's right, John. Another implement that saves crop residue when you're incorporating your Treflan or Broad Strike Plus Treflan is the combination tool. Mounting a spray bar ahead of the disc gangs is an efficient way to apply and incorporate your herbicide with this baby. The keys are to operate at an incorporation depth of 4 to 5 inches and run the equipment at 5 to 7 miles an hour using sweeps with an overlapping pattern to ensure thorough distribution.
Let's take a look. See here how these sweeps are staggered? Just like with a field cultivator, you want to offset the shanks, making sure the effective shank spacing is uniform across the implement. You also want to use sweeps that are at least as wide as your effective shank spacing to ensure thorough mixing of the soil. It's also important to keep the harrow attachment in good working order. It's best to replace any broken or worn tines and make sure you operate the harrow as close to vertical as possible. Pat?
Now, here's a relative newcomer to the field that's unnatural for herbicide incorporation. The John Deere Mulchmaster is especially equipped for excellent herbicide incorporation, soil mixing, and residue retention.
That's right, Pat. But unlike other implements, you want to operate the Mulchmaster only at the desired depth of incorporation, 2 to 3 inches, and operate it at speeds from 6 to 8 miles per hour.
And the rookie on the roster is an incorporation tool that's proven itself out on the field the past 2 seasons in university and farm plots. The soybean drill with an aggressive coulter caddy.
Oh, Pat, the coulter caddy's done a super job as a secondary incorporation tool. Weed control with Treflan has been excellent, and you can't beat this system for residue retention. Just Look at all this residue left on the soil surface.
The keys to making it work are disking the field once following an application of Treflan, setting the drills no more than 8 inches apart, using 3/4 to 1 1/4 inch fluted coulters, setting those coulters to penetrate the soil to the 1.5 to 2 inch depth, and attaching a leveling device like a chain or a tine harrow.
And Pat, operate this equipment at a minimum of 6 miles per hour and you got a handy Incorporation tool.
That's an impressive roster, and one that gives farmers many options. Of course, once the herbicide barrier has been established, you need to protect it. Any tillage completed after the Herbicide Incorporation should be shallow to avoid digging up untreated soil and compromising weed control. By designing a sound game plan, farmers who are minimizing tillage can still enjoy the consistent and dependable weed control provided with a PPI application of Treflan herbicide.
And don't forget Broad Strike Plus Treflan. It's the ultimate weed control program. Look at this field plot here. That soybean crop's being choked to death. Now, look here where the Broad Strike Plus Treflan was applied. Boom! No more broadleaf weeds. Boom! No more grasses. All this from one convenient pre-planned incorporated application. It's that simple.
That's right, John. And the best way to incorporate Broad Strike Plus Treflan into your cropping game plan is by making the most out of each and every tillage pass. Well, there you have it. The game plan for one-pass incorporation of Treflan and Broad Strike Plus Treflan herbicides. All you have to do is till the field once, apply and incorporate the herbicide properly, and then maintain that defensive barrier. For John Matter and all of us here at Dowell & Co., this is Pat Summersdon saying so long.
The preseason kickoff has been brought to you by Dowell & Co. and a roster of fine agricultural products. Broad Strike Plus Dual Herbicide offering flexible application, tillage, planting, and crop options. Broad Strike Plus Herbicide, providing flexible use options, handling convenience, and maximum pre-emergent broadleaf performance. Lorsban 15G Granular Insecticide, offering excellent rootworm control, broad-spectrum protection against cutworm and other insects, and compatibility with Accent and Beacon herbicides. N-Serve Nitrogen Stabilizer, which reduces nitrogen loss, improves crop health, and increases yield. And Stinger Herbicide, the only product that provides Canada thistle control all season long, even into next year's crop.